with Dr. Benita Zahn.
The development of a vaccine or vaccines to fight COVID-19 is moving at breakneck speed, but not all the vaccines work the same way. I recently had a chance to chat with Joe Bertino, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, about vaccine development and get some ABCs about the potential vaccines. Okay, Joe, we are having a plethora of information hitting us about vaccines in trial. If there were three things that you wish we'd all keep in mind as we read this stuff, what would that be?
Well, I'd say the three things are that, first, people are working very hard to develop an effective vaccine for the COVID virus because it appears that until we have a vaccine, things really won't get back to normal. Secondly, that vaccine technology has developed very, very sophisticated methods of producing vaccines. And obviously the goal is to make an effective vaccine that's safe. And then thirdly, for the vaccines, there are 200 vaccines or more under development that most likely it will take 2 doses of a vaccine to give people the correct immunity. 1 dose probably won't be enough.
When we hear that a vaccine is creating antibodies, is that enough for us to get our hopes up?
Antibodies alone probably are not enough. The immune system is very complicated, but let me try to explain it in a way that I think is a little bit simpler. Besides the development of antibodies, certain white blood cells called the T cells, they have to also be stimulated to know what the virus looks like, so that if the person gets infected by the virus, T cells go into action. They're like the army. They go into action, and then antibodies in addition are produced. And these things work together. Think about it's like the Army and the Navy. They work together to prevent the infection in an individual.
So when we read about these studies, do we have to be looking to see if they're also stimulating T cells in the body?
And I think that's absolutely true, Benita. And you know, the 3 studies that were reported within the last week of the 3 different vaccines, 2 are very similar and the third is not, all examined T cells as well as antibodies in a smaller subgroup of people that received the vaccines.
So that's what makes these 3 leading contenders?
Well, most of the other data that's out there is really so preliminary, we just can't say for sure, including the Moderna data. You know, 3 weeks ago, we thought they were, you know, leading the pack, so to speak, sort of like a run. They were a front runner. But now these 3 vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, and the Chinese vaccine, the Sinopharm vaccine, they all appear to stimulate T cells as well as antibodies.
And the Moderna doesn't?
I haven't seen the data for the Moderna, and I try to keep up with the literature day to day and also from the company's website because they'll post these things on their website, and I just haven't seen that data discussed.
So in essence, we've got 4 leading contenders. What's the difference between how they work?
Sure. The Sinopharm vaccine and the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine are very similar. What the vaccine scientists have done is they've taken an adenovirus. What's that? Oh, that causes the common cold. This is one from monkeys. And what they do is they make the virus so that it can't replicate in the body. So you can't get a cold from
It's an inactivated.
Well, it's not really inactivated. It's still live. It just can't cause a cold. And then what they do is they change the virus so that it recognizes the spikes on the COVID virus. Remember, it's the spikes that grab onto tissue cells and cause infection. So the thought is that you make these antibodies to the spikes, and that will reduce the chance of a serious infection or prevent infection in people who normally would have some sort of infection. All those two vaccines, though, have also shown to stimulate memory, we call it, immune memory by T cells. Person gets infected with COVID, the body says, we've seen this before, we're going to fight it. The Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, those two vaccines use messenger RNA, and that's just a little protein that tells the body to make antibodies to the COVID virus.
So this would be a genetically modified, genetically manufactured vaccine?
Genetically, yes.
Engineered.
Genetically manufactured, genetically engineered. I think, when people think about genetic engineering, they think about science fiction, perhaps. But that's how those vaccines work. And clearly, the Pfizer vaccine stimulates antibodies and T cells. You would suspect that the Moderna vaccine should do the same, since its mechanism is quite similar to the Pfizer vaccine. But we won't know until we look.
Right. Joe, at this point, is there a sense of which of the four is sort of the leader of the pack, number one, and number two, which may in fact hold the greatest promise with the least side effects?
Yeah, right now I would say the leader of the pack is the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. They've started a phase 3 study. They did their study in a very interesting fashion. They sort of combined phase 1 and phase 2. Normally you do 3 phases of a study. Phase 1, small number of healthy people. Phase 2, greater number. And phase 3, lots of people. And you see whether or not, compared to placebo, whether or not people get infected or not. The AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, what they did is they combined phase 1 and phase 2. So they're in phase 3 now. 30,000 people will be vaccinated. And I believe it's going to be 2 doses. As we said, 2 doses gives your body that memory to attack the virus when it enters your body.
And that's why you need 2 doses?
For many vaccines that we use in people now, we use 2 doses, or in some instances, 3 doses. A good example is the shingles vaccine. You get 2 doses 2 months apart. And the first dose stimulates the immune system, and the second dose gives it the memory.
How come we don't do that with flu?
Well, flu is a little bit different. The flu vaccine is using technology from 50 years ago. And that is the problem. And people have tried to develop new influenza vaccines using more modern technology. But right now, you just take the virus, they kill it, and they inject it into your arm. Or there's a dose also. This COVID pandemic may help us move ahead in terms of developing influenza vaccines that are much more effective.
Joe, they've been trying to develop a vaccine against MERS, against SARS. There have been some animal-tested vaccines with SARS, but nothing has taken. Why should we hold out hope that this coronavirus will be different?
Well, money being put into the research, the fact that this is a pandemic. MERS and SARS were really isolated to Southeast Asia and Middle East. I think, we're seeing the kind of ramp up for developing both vaccines and drugs to treat COVID like we've never seen before. This even overwhelms what we did for HIV. HIV took 10, 12 years to really get an effective treatment. We potentially can have vaccines in 2021 that are effective and safe. And and you hear me say this all the time, nothing is 100% safe, but you have to weigh
4 o'clock A block, he needs to be back for 4.
versus a potential for a side effect from a vaccine. I can tell you, everybody's going to get a sore arm from the vaccine. Some people are going to get a temperature. Some people are going to get a headache. Most people, those are going to be the main side effects.
And none of these that are being developed will give you the illness?
What these do is that they actually, they give you the illness, but not in the same way that the virus that is circulating around the world now gives you the illness. So nobody's going to get COVID from these vaccines, but you have to stimulate the immune system. So you have to have the immune system be able to recognize those spikes on the COVID virus. So we're not giving people COVID virus. We're giving them something that stimulates the immune system to recognize the COVID virus.
A lot of people are still going to be afraid to take the vaccine.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Thank you, Joe.
Always my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Health Beat, your health info on the go. We'll see you next time.